I'm Julia Treat Wright Williams, and my ancestry in this lovely town started back in 1622 when my great 12th, I'm the 12th generation, Robert Treat moved from England and came over to Wethersfield Colony and eventually moved down to the Milford area. While he was in the Milford area, he helped set that up, and one of his greatest task was to, of course, get some kind of a semblance of order. And when you had, unfortunately, some natives that were causing trouble, the king said, we got to settle this all down. So King Philip's War, which really wasn't a war, but it was a time when the settlers really kind of rose up to get everything settled and calm and organized back in the day. So Robert Treat was very notable on what he did, and the king was excited, happy. So he rewarded him with many grants of land in the colonies. So back then we had the Treat family gained over 1,000 acres in Orange, starting on the south side of Grassy Hill. That's why when you'll see Charles Court, Robert Treat Lane, and so on up in that area, that was all part of the Treat property. So starting off back then, everybody was a farmer, of course, and the land was farmed, cleared, and used. At one point, there were 9 different Treat homesteads in the 1,000 acres. Since then, we're down to 2. There's this house, and there's the one house on Grassy Hill Road, Isaac Treat. So the Treats were very, Robert Treat in particular was quite notable in his career of going on and becoming one of the first colonial governors in the state. It wasn't a state, in the colony. So he was up in Hartford when that famous story of the Charter Oak was happening. He apparently was very verbose and spoke and spoke and spoke, and Governor Andros was standing there waiting to get the charter because England wanted to regain control of the colonies. And my great-great-grandfather kept talking, and so the candles had to be lit in the State House, and they were, and he kept talking, and all of a sudden all the candles went out. And when they relit the candles, they looked around and noticed that the charter had disappeared. And story goes that it was taken out of this chart house and put in an oak tree. So that's why you'll see in all the greens in the state of Connecticut, they've all been at some point given an oak tree from the original charter oak that's in Hartford. So my family continues on, and they were, a lot of them stayed in the politics. They were involved in getting proposals to separate from West Haven, and then also worked on coming up with, again, another proposal to separate from Milford. Then it carried on down through right over to my grandmother, who was one of a state legislator, and she served 5 terms up at the Hartford. She was one of the first few women that got involved in politics. And I'm carrying on the tradition and staying involved in, helping out as far as the town charters and the town governments. I think it's in our blood.
Yeah, your grandmother probably really inspired you when you were younger, and
she did.
It was something that made you want to
exactly
continue that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, she was quite a woman. She really was very formidable and got things done. So on the farming side of this property, most of it was farmed until the last real farmer on the property was Leverett Treat. Leverett Treat in 1810 built this present home that I'm in now. So he was one of the last Treats that actually did farming. And part of that, with farming, of course, you have to have fertilizer. So he ended up, when they were putting in the railroad, convinced the railroad that we're going to give you the right-of-way to go through the land, but part of that is, could you build a siding for us? And that siding was used for the horse manure that was collected from all the horses in New York City. So all of that would come up, the trailer or the big box car would sit there on the siding, and that was used to, put the fertilizer on the fields. And back in the day, they did a lot of growing of seed corn that was being developed for sweet corn. So they were involved in as-grow, in getting all of the different varieties. In fact, one of the barns had it was a huge drying barn just for the purpose of drying the seeds. So again, they could come up with the best variety for sweet corn. So after Leverett Treat stopped farming, from then on, the next generations, what they did was they would rent out the land. And Stanley Skowski and on down to present-day Joey Munchesky, they would rent the land, grow the crops. At the same time, we also had some alfalfa fields. And I know talking in Walt Vesputa, where he said he would actually be helpful in going around and baling hay. Walt did come down quite a few of our pieces and help us hay. As far as growing up in Orange, it was a great place. Orange was back around the 1950s, 60s. It was a place where you knew everybody, and you would talk about doing an activity or something, and you knew someone was going to be there watching you and know about you, and you knew that word would get back to your parents really fast. So it was a good town. You really felt secure and really looked after, which I think is very different than what we see today. But as a child, my parents had a great idea to introduce us to horses. So at 8 or 9, I got my first horse, and my sister also. And we ended up really every day, that was our job, was to come down, take care of the horses, and keep out of trouble, so to speak. So we continued on with that direction. In about the late 60s, we actually opened a riding stable. And we would buy horses, sell them, teach riding lessons. We had pastures all over the back part of the property. We did boarding. And it was a great way to stay active, to stay busy. We had the 4-H horse shows in the beginning. And just a great way to be safe and grow up.
You probably met a lot of people through just working with other people's horses and taking care of them and meeting a lot of people in the community through that.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and again, other stables and stuff that had been established a long time. I think my fondest memory is always getting on my horse and riding down the road. We'd go, well, actually not down, well, we had a dirt road we'd ride, across the fields. The Weppawag Lake was not built. It was a huge gravel pit. So we'd go down, we'd cross through the gravel pit, we'd ride through that. We'd go over to the back side of Pruden Lane. We'd end up with West River Street, which was a dirt road. And the whole top of where Greenbrier is was nothing but this gorgeous field. And you would just take off to the top of that, cut through the back, and we'd end up in Eisenhower Park in Milford. And we never had to go literally ride on the road. We just crossed into the next field and the next field and the next field. And so it was a great adventure that we had when we would just take off. Can't do that now. So, and but we've had the other thing that I think is such a great legacy for the family is Wright's Pond. My dad built that in the beginning, early 50s, and he built it obviously for agricultural use as irrigation. And as we grew and the people in town just loved being able to go out there and ice skate. And even today, I'll hear people that will be the first memory they have when they come back into town or you bump into them. They'll say, yeah, I skated on that pond. And it was just an icon. And I think the biggest reward was the New York Times did an article on Orange and what a great place it is to live. And so they had an outline of the map of Orange, and smack in the middle, they had Wright's Pond. And I thought, whoa, look at that. That's the most important thing that the New York Times could put on the map.
They made it on the map.
Yeah, so it really is. It's just great. And the town you just really, it's just a great place to live. And I think my career in the town was a little unusual. I lived in the town all my life. I taught school in town for 34 years. I then went and got a job on the Post Road at LL Bean for 10 years after that. And during that time, I served on many different committees in town. So it was really the type of thing that everybody knew me. And I didn't have a chance to meet all of them, but I just got so many different hats on, and I was in so many different places that it really was interesting to see how many people I reached out to. But it was a wonderful, wonderful place to be, and I'll never forget my interview for teaching. I sat down with Brendan Toohey, went up to the Academy building, because that's where they had the board office at the time. And I sat down, and I was so nervous. This was my first interview ever. And I sat on the edge of my chair, ready for the first question. And Brendan Toohey turned to me, he goes, "How's it going painting that fence? I've seen you out there for days working on it." Because I was painting the whiteboard fence right along Old Grassy Hill Road, and he passed me every day to go home. And so that was my opening of my interview, and after that it was very relaxing. So it's good. So
what made you want to get involved and be a volunteer and participate? What were there people that influenced you? Were there
definitely
any specific events that
definitely
spawned that? Yeah.
My dad was the type, and even my grandmother, you know, if it was a job that had to get done, you got it done. And we just followed suit in that. And it was just an easy thing for us to fall into. And of course we had the opportunities to get involved. And I think that just made it so that you didn't think about, well, I'm not getting paid for this, or I'm not getting any recognition for this. You just did it because it was fun. And I think that really got us all hooked. Definitely we got hooked on the country fair. The fair started again at the Bicentennial, and we went up to it. We went back and forth. We did a lot of things during the Bicentennial, but then the next year you're busy and whatnot. So we didn't go to the fair for a couple of years. Then all of a sudden we were up there, and we looked around and we said, "Gosh, you guys need some help." Well, that was the end of it. So 42 years I've been up there working, and it's like everybody knows that's the weekend of the fair. That's where you're going to be, and there's no questions asked. You just make that quick phone call, and everybody says, "Got it, be there." And then again, you're surrounded by all these wonderful people who live in Orange, who love doing that kind of stuff, and it's just a lot of fun. And I always encourage people moving into town, get involved. Just find some kind of niche that you really want to be in, and the friends you're going to make, and you're going to just be rewarded time and time again. Oh, it's good.
That really is such a beautiful sentiment, and I agree with that. And that's actually what I was just about to ask you, is what's something you hope people watching this
exactly
can learn from this, and just think about as they go on in the future for
right.
future generations.
Right.
That is an extremely crucial part
it
of
is.
being
It
able
is.
to
You do.
be involved. And
you get involved and you're rewarded. You really, really are. And I think we heard that yesterday even with Susan Anderson talking about, just reach out. Someone's going to reach out a hand and just grab hold and stuff and see where it leads you. But it's a great feeling to get involved in an activity, and Orange is a great place to get involved. Yeah.
it's great that Orange has had that reputation for so many years too, and we hope to continue.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I think kicking off the 200th celebration, that's going to get us going.